Hey guys, and welcome to episode 145 of the OCDStories.com podcast. Now, in this episode, I chat with David Murphy about his OCD story. In it, we go into his OCD story. We go into what his recovery journey has looked like and looks like currently. We talk about any sort of lifestyle changes he's made. We talked about therapy and OCD in Ireland. We talked about his advocacy. So he's doing some cool things in Dublin. And I'm always happy to share those types of things with you guys because I think we need more advocacy in this world, especially for OCD. So hopefully what he's done off his own back could inspire some of you if that's what you're currently looking to do, is get into advocacy. We talk about his biggest epiphany in recovery, also his biggest roadblock and how he overcame it. He shares some of his favourite resources, i.e. books, and then there's the general questions like what would you tell someone who's starting their recovery journey, the billboard question, etc. But before we get into it, if this podcast has helped you anyway and you've been enjoying it, if you could give it a review on iTunes or wherever you listen, it would help me reach more people and mean a lot to me. So thank you for that and for your continued listenership. But without further ado, here is David. On the podcast today, I have David Murphy, who has kindly agreed to share his OCD story with us. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks, Stu. Welcome to be honest.
No, it's good to have you on. And as I start with most of the guests, is just getting their OCD story. So in as little as much detail, please share.
Yeah, so OCD to me, like probably several 100,000 people is quite unknown, or was quite unknown to me. Till about 2 years ago. I was living in Southampton. I was working a really stressful job in a high performance academy. Kind of left a job that I loved and with a good support network in it to working really isolated. Yeah. I was also kind of juggling a long distance relationship at the time, which didn't work out, and there was kind of lots of external stressors. But I started noticing me getting really anxious about my health. So it kind of started with a lot of health anxiety worries, going to the doctor several times, getting blood tests, getting STI checks. Things like, even though they were coming back fine and normal, I wasn't convinced. No. So then I spent a weekend in Slovakia with my friend who was studying medicine over there, and I asked him like, what's going on? And I opened one of his books and like I saw this could be linked to HIV, and I was thinking, what? So that was just one of the worst things you can probably do if you're anxious, is to start looking and Googling. So, and then like something really strange and a really common characteristic of OCD started happening. I started having intrusive thoughts, which really scared the hell out of me. Like I really thought that I was starting to worry if I was schizophrenic or if I was completely going crazy. But I started having lots of harm OCD thoughts, and what they are is like lots of images of hurting people I love, or what if I harm this person? And it particularly happened with my ex-girlfriend. Like I'd have images, like if we were cooking together with the knife, I'd have images on the side of a cliff if we were out walking. It was just very, very scary. Yeah. And I was fusing with those thoughts. So like I was waking up in the morning thinking that I was a murderer or that I was a horrible person. And I was really like getting into a really dark, depressive state because I didn't know what was going on. And it got to the point where it was literally every theme under the sun. Like I could barely leave the house without like being worried about having intrusive thoughts around kids, around kind of the elderly, and particularly difficult when you're working with patients. And those patients can vary from 6 years of age right up to 90 years of age. And that was what was really difficult. It was really coming into my work life, my personal life, and I just lost all enjoyment for everything. It was really, really difficult. And then I decided I'd go and speak to a doctor, tell them exactly what, and the NHS is fantastic. Like I just could not believe the service, and I began the Steps to Wellbeing program in Southampton. And what that is, this was like a group therapy. There was 6 people with OCD, and it was a 12-week course of group therapy. But for me, it didn't really help because everyone else kind of had the physical compulsions,
Yeah.
you know, like hand washing. And I was starting to think, God, am I that different from these people?
Mm.
You know, my compulsions were highly mental rituals, and not counting or some of the other common ones. It was a lot of self reassurance.
Yeah.
I'm not this, I'm not
Yeah.
that, and checking my history, checking my past events, checking if I said the right thing. Lots
Mm.
of kind of mental checks. So yeah, as you know, it just becomes very draining very quickly, and you just feel very isolated.
Yeah.
And I finished that 12-week program, and it gave me some relief. And I think it was really good because it made me understand what OCD was. And it kind of took the stigma away from it, being there with other people of my own age,
Yeah.
both male and female, struggling with similar issues. So it got to a point, Stu, that I left Southampton, moved back home to my house in Ireland, because it was Christmas. What are we now? Christmas 2016. God. Okay, so it's 2 years ago. Wow. Okay. God, time flies.
Yeah.
Christmas 2 years ago, I hit breakdown. I hit absolute breakdown. I was getting lots of harm, OCD thoughts about myself. Like, what if I kill myself? Like, I'd be walking along and I'd be running, or I'd see a tree, and all of a sudden an image of me popping or jumping off it, or hanging from the tree, or like lots of these really scary images. And like, I know Chrissy talks about it quite a bit about
Yeah.
the suicide OCD, and I think it's really important for people to talk about that because it's a lot more common than people actually think. And I think there is a stigma around that word, so people are afraid to talk openly about it.
Yeah. Good point.
And I used to hear that word and I used to shiver. I used to be like, oh God, this is just going to stimulate some horrible thoughts, and now, like, well, I'll get to what's going on now, but like, it has to be broken down. But at that stage, I decided I'm going to go to my family doctor who knows me from a child, and discuss what's going on. This was back in Ireland. And I went in, and he's my best friend's dad. We're very close, and it's really difficult. I sat in front of him, and he knew something was wrong, but I couldn't express myself. So I literally just broke down in front of him, and we kind of went through systemically what was going on, and I was then put on medication, and that was something that I was really resentful to do. And I'm not sure what it's like in the UK or anywhere in the world, but in Ireland there is such a huge stigma, huge, especially with men. And I'm not quite sure. I don't have the answer as to why that is, because we're starting to get better. But if you're on medication for a mental health problem, oh God, like, he mustn't be okay. So there was that kind of bubbling in the back. But I had every faith and every trust in my GP. So I was put on 10 milligrams, which is quite very low dose. And it really was the start of my recovery. Like, it was that appointment onwards really kind of, that was the start of my journey.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. Was there anything else you wanted to share before I kind of jump in with some questions?
No, I guess I'll speak about therapy and that kind of thing along with the questions. But no, I think that was a brief overview of how OCD came to my life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for going into detail. I appreciate it. So when you were doing that group therapy in Southampton, kind of what did it include? Was there ERP involved in it, or was it quite sort of psychoeducation based?
Yeah, there was a lot of psychoeducation in it. But it really interestingly, I look back now, 2 years on, and yeah, there was ERP. However, the ladies facilitating the group were very good with ERP for, again, the hand washing, the physical compulsions. When it came to my turn to discuss my ERP homework, they were asking me to write imaginal exposures, which is a really, really effective way of doing ERP for someone who has intrusive thoughts. But there was no guidance. I didn't really know what to be writing. I was scared. I was like, is this too much? Is this too little? Do you know, and that's where my OCD kind of took over in my recovery as well. I was trying to get it really right. Like, I was trying to have the perfect treatment and the perfect homework, and it was just, yeah, it didn't sit well with me, because I think, and Stu, I'm sure you'll agree, but in order for ERP to be effective, you need to really understand the basis for ERP, and really understand why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And with group therapy in 12 weeks, it's quite a short period of time. And they didn't have time to go into detail about it. But looking back on it, it was a really nice starter point that the NHS provided. But again, lacking resources, it's impossible for them to really push.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think if you had, say, 8 people in that group with similar worries to you, then and compulsions, then it may have been way more effective, because you would have had each other to bounce off of and talk to. And but yeah, it sounds like it was just you, and then you have even less people to talk to within that group, which makes it more complicated.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, cool. And I guess, where are you at now in your journey?
So I think I've seen about 6 therapists.
Yeah.
But it's like buying a car, mate. You have to experiment. You can't just go to the first person. I'm really good, mate. I'm highly functioning. I'm like everybody. I have my bad days. I have my bad weeks. You know, and sometimes it can even extend to a bad month. But what's really important for me is to go along with Mark Freeman's kind of philosophy of living values, following my values. I have a highly, highly strong meditation practice, which really is good. And for anyone with intrusive thoughts, meditation is pretty much the best ERP you can do. It's really effective for me. But I'm at a stage now. I have a new girlfriend. She's fantastic. Molly should be delighted to hear her name on this. And I'm back socializing with my mates. Like, that was a huge thing. I was quite isolated from them. I've built better relationships. I've actually started creating lots of new projects outside of physiotherapy, which gives me that little bit more incentive to work hard on myself. I've just started with a new therapist. Ireland, unfortunately, has really got a lack of OCD specialists. And we're a small nation. We're a small little country. Very proud, but mental health just isn't there yet. So I'm actually seeing a really good therapist in London, and we're doing kind of Skype sessions where I'm now starting ERP a lot more gentler. So when I say starting, I'm probably starting a more structured plan. You know, over the 12 months I've been doing my own ERP. So yeah, reading books with quite a lot of nasty stuff in them, and watching, like, not shying away from, you know, things on Netflix like 13 Reasons Why, or The Mind of a Psychopath, or anything that's got these horrible kind of things to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, and part of my my OCD has definitely morphed in the last 12 months to be more focused around relationship OCD as well. So, and I think that's quite common, relationship and harm to be quite interlinked, because I've seen that, and I've spoken to people, and it seems to be quite common. But that's been really difficult. And when that creeps in due to any kind of stress or any argument we might have, that can be quite like taken back. It's like, God, how can I love her 1 minute and then just want to run a mile 30 seconds later? You know, it's so confusing. But it's really good. Like I've done some good work around it, and very open with Molly, and she's very open and well educated. And I would suggest that anyone struggling, particularly in Ireland, when you don't have those kind of resources, to really, really get support from the people who are around you initially, because that helps so much, and get them to educate themselves. Do you know, that really, really helped Molly. So, but yeah, I'm good. I'm working full time. I'm training. I'm studying a new course on mindfulness based stress reduction.
Nice.
I've recently started a mindfulness and exercise group, the first one in Ireland. It's called Mental Health and Exercise.
Oh, cool.
And it's a group where people can come with stress, anxiety, or any they don't even have to have anything going on in their lives. They might just like exercise. And I formatted that. They come, they do 20 minutes of mindfulness. It can be whatever, a body scan, a breath practice, or even just lying there, or some yoga.
Yeah. And
then we split into 3 groups and we exercise together.
Nice.
And then we go off and we socialize. You know, we do social events. So I'm kind of trying to tick all boxes, you know, working on our mental fitness, working on our physical fitness, and then also improving social isolation. Yeah. So trying to hit a couple of corners of that global health model. And my goal with that is to kind of go global with that. I'm trying to start one up in London or in England, and try and get them kind of in different cities.
Yeah.
So that's a really good project that I'm really passionate about. It's completely free for people to attend. It's volunteers who help. But it's really, really effective. I started it initially as a 6-week project, and that we're in the 23rd week.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's growing, so yeah.
And that's for anyone in Ireland listening, is that Dublin based?
That's Dublin based. It's Phoenix Park on a Tuesday evening, 7 till 9. And yeah, we're getting sponsorship from different people, and we're getting free gear and things. So it's pretty good. It's going to be good. But yeah, watch this space.
Nice. Well, if I'm over in Dublin anytime soon, I'll try and attend.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Cool, cheers. And so going back to meditation, I guess what does your kind of daily practice look like?
Well, I'm quite lucky, Stu, in the sense that I'm in a clinical room all day, so I have little notifications. And my clinical practice is, I do both formal and informal practice. Yeah. My formal practice would be anywhere from 10 minutes up to 45 minutes. And that 10 minutes could be a breath practice where I'm just focusing on breathing, acknowledging what's going on, acknowledging my mind wandering, and just bringing myself back. Then the longer kind of ones are more body scans, and centering myself, and really the reason my meditation is so strong is because when I do become a teacher in it, I really want to give an experiential version of events. And it really, people have this lovely idea, oh, meditation brings peace and happiness and inner strength and power. And don't get me wrong, Tony Robbins and Gary Vaynerchuk, they're really good guys, and they paint a huge, beautiful picture of what mindfulness looks like. But it's really not. It's sweaty, it's dark, it's horrible. Yeah. And it's hard. It's harder than lifting weights. You know, it's this kind of brain loading. But you do get benefits, but it's the intention is really, really important. You should never really go to meditation with the intention of feeling better. And that was a piece of advice given to me by a Buddhist teacher. I did a silent week retreat. Which was really intense.
Yeah,
no phones, no books, no reading, no eye contact, no talking for a full week. And that was, we kind of got teachings individually, and one of the teachings was that never go to a meditation with an intention to feel better. And it talks about this beginner's mind. Go to it like a child and just go, oh well, let's see what happens. So yeah, my daily practice, when I say I do daily, sometimes I take the weekend off or I take a Sunday off, because again, life gets in the way.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really, it's really good. I used to do an awful lot of reading around it, and Googling of it and looking for science, but I've stopped that. I've kind of just, let's see what happens. Let's
Yeah.
really be in the experience. But I like, one thing I have to say, it doesn't matter if you meditate for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 2 minutes. It's the fact of just sitting there, coming back. Like, as long as you show up, you're doing yourself a service.
Yeah.
And you're doing your overall health a service. So even if it's 30 seconds getting onto the floor, that's better than not.
That's true. Yeah, just be able to draw your mind back even once to the present, even for a split second, is training it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I find really good is mindful running. Like, some people come into me in clinic and say, "Oh, my meditation's running," and I love that. I think that's fantastic. But I would quiz them on it, because I guarantee you that a lot of people, when they go running, are still thinking about work or thinking about some stress at home.
Yeah.
But I recently ran a half marathon, and it was the first 21 kilometers that I've never been in my head, and completely in my training. And I was just so in tune with it. So the practice works. And you do see the benefits, and it takes time. Like, I've had a practice now for almost 15 to 18 months, where in the last 6 months it's increased. So it takes time. It's like any type of gym work, like, if it's worth doing, it takes time.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Now I'm excited to see your journey and kind of how it progresses. Okay. So I noticed nature is popped up a few times on your Instagram page, and I'll put the link to your Instagram in the show notes so anyone listening can check that out. But yeah, what is it about, I guess, being in nature, and there's plenty of it in Ireland, that you find useful?
It's you asked me 5 years ago, am I that nature loving person, that calm, relaxed person? I was going, no way. I was working in professional football in England. We didn't have time to even look at nature. But there's this, I don't know what it is. It just brings you into somewhere where you become a little bit more grateful of your surroundings. And being there, be it with myself or be it with friends, like I've done a bit of hiking this summer, and the freshness, it just really awakes you, and it just makes you feel, wow, there is so much more outside of my head that brings much more clarity, and it's just such a nicer hobby. Get outside. And the beauty is, I would have got outside this summer and seen two places where I've been plenty of times as a child, plenty of times as a teenager, and I will have seen something new. Once you've been there once, it doesn't mean you've seen it all. And when you become a bit more aware of your surroundings and really, really get involved into it, it's just, I don't know what it is, Stu. Do you know what's going on with nature? Like, it's
Well, I've seen the studies and stuff, but yeah, again, not going down that path. I don't know. For me, like you said, I think that was a good point you made about it does change every time you go into it. When you start to become a bit more mindful, in London, we don't have a great deal of natural spaces, but even going to, say, Richmond Park, which is fairly big, if I keep going there each time, no matter how many times I go, I see something new, even if I'm walking the same path, just because you become aware of it more. And yeah, I mean, the Japanese studied it in like the 80s, and it's all about the scents that come off the trees are meant to be relaxing.
Wow.
And they call it like fractal patterns. So where all the kind of like the shape of the tree mirrors itself constantly. So, you got the main branch and another one comes off, and then that splits into five. Then one of those splits into five. If that makes sense, it creates this pattern.
Okay,
yeah. And that and the kind of ripples you see in water, all of that's meant to be relaxing for some reason.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
and I can see why. Like, there's a place in Ireland, Glendalough. I don't know if you've ever visited.
No.
And it is one of the most spectacular, breathtaking places I've ever been. It's got this beautiful lake. It's an old glacier. It used to be run by the monks back in the day.
Yeah.
but it's just got such a beautiful hike. So honestly, if you ever get over this side of the I'll take you down. I'll
Cool.
treat you down to the Glendalough hike.
Nice.
It's good.
Yeah, no, look forward to that.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that always comes up to me, maybe it's a bit more of a spiritual comment, is that I think we forget as humans that we are nature. Like we're as organic as the plants and the trees. And I think getting back out there kind of subconsciously reminds us of what we are. We're not bricks. We're not shopping malls. You know, they're all man-made things, although they're still somewhat made up of the same molecules that we are. But we're more aligned with the natural world, and I think it just reminds us of that.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I think people, including myself, if you're working full-time jobs or stressful jobs, you get lost in what you're doing. You know, the most you see is four walls of a room and a computer screen. And I think by recentering yourself outside in nature, and it doesn't have to, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, and I guess you're not either, but you're not saying that you have to go for a hike for 2 days. It could even be out to the back garden, and just being there. And these things are right on our doorstep, and these are things that we can do. And it's about behavior change, and I think that's really important as well. It's about changing our behavior and focus of doing something like that, and being open to whatever happens as well. To become aware of, oh, this is nature. What's this going to do for me? People can be quite lost. People can get lost with that judgmental mind and that critical mind. And I know I'll probably have some lads get on to me about this and have a bit of banter and a bit of crack about it, but it is really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, and that's a good point about same with mindfulness, just going into it with an open mind, not expecting anything. And I think that for me, nature, as you said, it doesn't have to be a hike. I can rarely get out to a hike if I'm honest. But I noticed that I've got a few big plants in my apartment, and I had to take them away. I said this before on the podcast, but I had to take them away while we went on holiday. We couldn't leave them in the apartment because they'd die, etc. So we had to take them to friends to water them and look after them.
Right.
And when we came back the first night, we didn't have the plants yet, and it just felt sterile and empty. I felt the difference. And then when they came back, it just felt so much more alive and warm as an apartment. So I think just even putting it in where you live can, make a difference.
Yeah. Simple things. Like, it's really, really simple, but hugely important.
Cool. All right. And I mean, you did reel off quite a few. I've got a question here around kind of any lifestyle changes, and you did reel off quite a few, but was there any more that you wanted to go into any depth with?
Lifestyle changes. Let me think. I think starting meditation, I know we've spoken about it, I'm not going to go into it anymore, but getting a meditation practice was really, really important. Reading, instead of being on the phone, reading books that actually are full of value and worth and good information. Like, some days it can be a novel, but other days it could be, a book about cognitive therapy and mindfulness, like studying what I'm doing for my course, or it might be Mark Freeman's book. Pick that up and have a read of it. And I think that's really important. That was really important for me. And lifestyle change probably was more about taking things back into my life that I actually let slip or I avoided. So, like, going to the cinema to watch dodgy movies, I did cut down on alcohol for a long time. Not that I was anyway abusing alcohol, but I did notice the days after, say, a night out, I would have been very anxious, and my OCD intrusive thoughts would have been through the roof. But I'm slowly kind of getting back where I can not be too worried about going out and having a few pints. Because I know that I can handle the repercussions and that kind. But it's also the fact that I'm not absolutely not advocating going out and getting drunk or anything, but it's a part of my culture, it's a part of my social circles that I was avoiding, and I was losing that social circles because of that, is sad in a way, but also nice that I can kind of slot back in and have a couple of drinks and not feel so anxious about that. Probably opening up a bit more as well. Like this whole My Brain and I, Instagram page, I would have never have done that.
Yeah.
So yeah, using social media with a little bit more of an intention rather than just scrolling and getting jealous of people who are laid out on the beach in Bali, But yeah, I think they would have been the big ones. I've always kind of exercised and trained. I've always kind of looked after my diet for the best part in the last 5 years. So there wasn't too much of a change from that aspect. But yeah, regular therapy, being more aware with my emotions.
Yeah.
My girlfriend laughs like it's like I'd be lucky to go a week without having a little tearing session, like it could be anything on TV. But I think that's really important, especially for men. I'd be very like, if I'm sad, I'm sad. If I'm happy, I'm happy. If something's good, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of personality I have, and by accepting that, it's much easier. So yeah, look, there's lots of behavior changes there, I guess.
Absolutely.
We could probably spend days talking about each one, but it hasn't been easy, and again, I allow myself to slip up, or at least I tell myself. I do get quite harsh on myself at times when I may let these good behaviors slip up, but at the same time, we're not rocks.
No.
We are humans, and I think you have to allow yourself to fail and not succeed, and don't hold yourself in the highest standards. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. Good advice. And what would you say your biggest epiphany was, kind of on this path?
Oh, Stu, you've cracking questions, I have to say.
Thank you.
My biggest epiphany happened recently, actually.
Okay.
And it was about doing things you love. You'll read it, you'll see it online, you'll go to talks where people are talking about do the things you love in life, and I can't advocate that anymore. Like, it's like I was just saying to Maya, I woke up one night and it was like I literally said to her, I used those words, I've just had an epiphany. Like, we've got ideas to travel the world and go and live in Canada for a year or so, and these things, like, it's these things that I would have just left them at the back of my mind. So the biggest epiphany came to me really was, be who you want to be, not who other people want you to be. And I know that sounds like that's a cliche, okay? But it really is so true. Do the things you want to do, and other things will actually fall into your life.
Yeah.
And I've seen that. I've stopped trying to force and manipulate and control. I've kind of sat back and let things happen, and some things it's going to be quite difficult and challenging, but that's what life is.
Yep.
And I think it's just let it roll.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, good advice, and I love a cliche, so no need to apologize. Yeah, absolutely. I think we could all, I'm sure some people are good at it, but a lot of us need to do better at doing what we want to do and living our lives without worry of what other people think. Cool. So I guess was there any, I'm sure there were many, but was there one in particular sticks in your mind, a particular roadblock to your recovery? And if so, kind of what was it and how did you overcome it?
Oh, that's quite a deep, that resonates with me quite strongly. Yeah, I'll go on and talk about it a little bit. I met someone online, and I won't mention who they were, but they kind of claimed to be this therapist, and I was paying quite a bit of money for it, and the therapy was really dangerous, is what I was receiving. And I know really 100% deep in my heart that his intentions were extremely good. and they still are. And his methods work for some people, but for me, it was extremely terrifying. Some of the homework he was getting me to do, I was like, I'm not doing that. You know, that's really out there. Spending 2 weeks apart from my girlfriend, you know, without communication, that's intense. Standing on bridges without knowing what the reason for standing there was, you know, and I think sometimes that can be effective for people who have this harm OCD. It gives them a bit of trust. I know several CBT therapists in the UK do that as homework. But yeah, there was just, I think when you're building relationships with therapists, the issue for me was it was very off the cuff for that particular person. He could have been lying down on his couch, eating or drinking, or half asleep, and not really engaged. There was no kind of notes taken. He wasn't. He wouldn't know what homework he's prescribed. So the following week, he'd be like, "Oh, so what did I give you?" Do you know? And no consistency, and that to me is a big red flag. But I have to say, as a person, he was a gent and is a gent. But as a therapist, he's not a therapist anyway. But as a coach for OCD, for me personally, it was a huge barrier. And it took me probably 2-3 months after finishing treatment with him to see that, and not just see it, but also get over it. You know, and that was quite a big roadblock, because when you go and you speak to someone, you get that bubble of hope again. It comes racing through you, and you're brilliant. You come out buzzing. I come out and you're absolutely on top of the world. You're really hopeful. 2-3 sessions later, you've got to still be feeling that. Or you've got to have a sense of, right, this is moving in that direction. This is good, and you're working a path together. So yeah, I think with that, again, one last piece of advice would be, when you're finding a therapist, really do your homework, and genuinely don't be afraid to tell someone that it's not working. You know, like if they take it personally, that's on them. You know, like our mental health, our physical health, our overall health is up to us. And we're not there to please anybody, you know?
Absolutely.
So yeah, be really, really careful of who you see online. Be really careful. Check everything out.
Yeah, good point. And as you said, like, therapists are trained to accept your questions and to hear them out. So whatever questions you have about what type of therapy it is, how long it will last for, some of the example things you may be doing, they're not going to get upset or offended. And if they do, it's, as you said, a red flag of go elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. And I haven't got this question written down, but I want to ask it is, so, you know, you mentioned about mental health stigma in Ireland. What can the people of Ireland do to start to change that a bit?
Yeah, I think that's the Irish healthcare system's asking that question every day.
Okay.
But from someone who's living it and trying to promote it themselves, I think young people, I think it starts at schools, to be honest. I think I would love to see an initiative go into primary schools. And we teach here in religion and SPHE and these kind of subjects. And look, I'm not particularly religious, and I know people are, so I'm not criticizing it, but there are more important things to be discussing in classes like that. And I think modules such as emotional intelligence and well-being, like it's like these initiatives would have an absolute huge success rate in primary and secondary schools. And I think when you look at youth suicide rates, it's huge, and particularly in Ireland, like there's lots of stories of young people wanting to kill themselves, and that breaks my heart. You know, it really breaks my heart. And the funny thing is that when you hear people say, I actually wrote a reflection on this recently, when you hear people say you are not your thoughts, I used to go through the roof. I'd be like, why are you telling me this? Like, stop telling me these like mumbo jumbo things. But actually, when you start to realize you are not your thoughts, it is one of the most freeing experiences. And if kids could really learn this at a young age, we would have huge improvements in, number one, suicide rates, but even number two, quality of life.
Yeah.
You know, reduced like even healthcare costs. You know, it would be huge for the economy to even start implementing these. I would love, once I become an MBSR teacher, I would love to go into secondary schools and actually do 2 hours a week with a group of students, you know. And I think that is where mental health is moving. There are TV ads, and I have to say, Ireland has been, in the last 6 months, Stu, like, you see ads.
Changed a lot, hasn't it? Yeah,
it's really good to see. There's an ad on the radio at the minute about talking to your children about mental health. There's a TV ad at the minute. It's there.
Yeah.
But we just need to start now talking about it and implementing it. And getting it out there. Like, people can advocate for this, and I'm sure you've seen this in your experience. But we can all talk about advocacy, but we can talk and talk and talk. It really needs actions for things to change. And I think that's what Ireland needs. I don't think we can do it at an adult level. I think if you start at 6, 7 and you start working the way up, like I know my nephews who are quite young, they're quite emotionally intelligent. Do you know, like they're really young, but they're well in tune because their mum has them like that, their school has them like that. So I think there are shifts.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, start young, I agree. And it's good. I mean, Ireland generally over the last sort of 2 years has been changing dramatically, even beyond mental health. So with all the reforms and stuff. Cool. All right. And so, you know, a couple of questions towards the end now. You've got a billboard in Dublin. What do you want on that billboard to say? What do you want written?
Come to the Phoenix Park.
Yeah.
Come to the Phoenix Park on a Tuesday night. No. What would I have on the billboard? And I've heard this on other podcasts, and I've gone, wow. I would say, if it's in Ireland, I would probably go with something around Buddhism, or like learn the Four Noble Truths, you know, or like understand that it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
And again, we see this plastered around a lot, but it's really, you might have to look at something 1,000 times before you actually really feel that. Something around that.
Cool. Try
and destigmatize shame as well. I would probably ask you for another billboard.
Yeah, we can have a couple. All right, cool. And if you could pick up the phone and call your 20-year-old self, what would you tell him?
It's going to be okay. That's the first thing that comes to my head. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I think it's really good. And there's some good kind of stuff when you talk to your younger self and your inner child. I think you do get some really good benefits from it. And yeah, life isn't as hard as it seems, you know?
Yeah.
And that's true. Like, I think it's really important to learn that it is going to be okay. You might feel crappy for months, years, days, hours, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
There's going to be a point where that is going to change. And that's what I really want people to understand. Like, it's really, you're going to die someday.
Mm-hmm.
So why speed it up?
Yeah.
You know, and do you know what? That's on my billboard. That is on my billboard. Okay.
Yeah.
Like we are all going to die, and that's sometimes a scary thing to think about, and it certainly is for me. But yeah, why speed it up? Let nature take its course. And I think that's really helped me, and it's been important for me to accept that death is a thing.
Yeah.
It's been a really big problem for me as a child and as a teenager and a young adult. But slowly getting there.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Death can be inspiring for life when we kind of embrace it. Obviously, many people, death could be very scary for everyone, but with people with OCD, even more so, right? But there's some kind of, Okay. No, thanks for that. I like that. That was good. And is there anything else I haven't asked you wish you could have shared?
I actually don't think so, Stu. I think that's really, really comprehensive. I think they were the kind of main topics I wanted to talk about. I think if you are suffering with OCD, it's really important to educate yourself, learn about it, and know that it's going to morph. It's not just going to be one thing. And I've seen that, even though I would say that I'm well and truly into recovery now, I still have my days. This weekend hasn't been great, but I'm still practicing those good behaviors because I know that they're good for me and I enjoy them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think behavior change is where we have to go with a lot of kind of mental illness and even just normal population,
Yeah.
Not that people with mental illness aren't normal, but you know what I mean. People who haven't got a mental illness.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really important. That behavioral therapists start looking at it. They are, but I think that's what the kind of general population should look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for your time today, and thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Stu. It was really, really good.
So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed my chat with David. And as mentioned before, if you've been inspired or helped by the podcast in any way and you have 30 seconds of your time, if you could leave an iTunes review or whatever podcast you listen on, it would help me deeply and it would mean a lot to me. But quick disclaimer, guys, this podcast is not therapy. It's not a replacement for therapy. Please seek treatment from a trained professional. And until we speak, take care.